I'm here. I was not certain if I was going to do this today since I'm still kind of tired, not fully recovered from the weekend, but I got a good night's sleep, so I thought, well, why not? Give it a shot. Okay, so I'm going to wait just a second here, and as people come on, then I'll start with the demo. Well, hello, you guys. Hi, Gail. Hi, Susan. Hi, Paula. Hi, Debbie. Okay. Yeah, craft fairs really do wear you out. It's not like you're doing a whole lot because you're mostly sitting most of the day, but the setup and the tear down is always, it's a lot of work. There's no denying it. And the fact that we had rainy weather, which got mud all over everything. Not mud, but kind of dirt that splashed. Our tent was along the bottom of the tent walls, got all splashed with dirt from the rain that happened during the night. Thank goodness that it didn't really rain during the show, but it was enough that we just couldn't put the tent away like that. So it's a lot of work, no doubt, but fun in its own way. Yeah, I know. An indoor show is easier since you don't have the tent, but when you're outdoors, you really do need one. So anyway, what I'm doing today is an enamel demo, and I had bought some what they call copper donuts from Rio quite a few years ago that were on clearance. So evidently they weren't selling or whatever, but I bought a ton of them because I thought I could use them somehow in my in my enameling work. And so I bought a bunch of them, but I really wasn't sure what to do with them. So I did enamel some. I did a bunch of different colored ones and stuff, but I never really incorporated them with anything in my work. So it was interesting because our fellow group member, Deb Henready, noticed a post on Instagram from Amy Johnson, who is also a group member, and she used some copper tubing that she got at the hardware store and enameled those pieces. And so I took a look at it and I thought that was pretty cool. So I contacted Amy and asked her about it, and she was very generous in her information. And so I went and sought out the supplies that she mentioned, and have been experimenting with them, along with the copper donuts that I bought from Rio those many years ago. So I think you can make some interesting pieces of jewelry with these. I'm going to recommend probably not using them as finger rings, only, and it's not that you can't try, because you certainly can, but the ones that I found available were just in a couple of sizes, and one was a 1/2 inch and the other was a 3/4 inch, and they're kind of heavy. They're thicker than a traditional copper pipe, like say just a copper pipe like this. And I'll talk about this as well, because you can buy copper pipe and you can cut it in whatever widths that you want. This tubing is a little bit thinner, like I said, but these others, I'll show you what they are. These are the ones that Amy was using, and I got them at Menards, and they are, let's see here, they are called, the brand is Sous Chief, I want to say sous chef, but it's Sous Chief is the brand, and these are in 1/2 inch, and you can get them either 10 in a package, or I think it was 25 in a package. They were, I don't know, maybe for these 10, they were maybe $4, something like that. They have marking, black marking on them, but that doesn't make one bit of difference when you're enameling. So they had that. I bought a package of, excuse me, the 1/2 inch, and then I bought a package of the 3/4 inch. They can get a little bit heavy when you are putting enamel on them. That's going to add a little bit more weight. So, you know, I don't know if you would necessarily want to wear them as earrings, but if weight doesn't matter to you on your ears, then I'd say go for it. But you could make some cute necklaces and things with linking them all together too. So that's always a possibility. If you wanted to make finger rings, then I would suggest using a thinner walled copper pipe and cutting your pipe either with a pipe cutter, which is something like this that you can get at your hardware store, or you could cut them with your jeweler saw into the widths that you want. My friend Aldina, she lives in Rome. She's Italian, and I visited her a few years ago when I was there, and she likes to enamel, and she made some beautiful rings, you know, for your fingers with copper piping or copper tubing, whatever you want to call it. In fact, there's a picture of it on the thread in our group page of one of the spinner rings that she made with that. So I'm not going to go into that aspect of it, but you can do that as well with copper. I would be a little careful because it is glass and it could possibly crack if you're doing some hard work or something with your hands and you have one of those enameled rings on. I wouldn't recommend wearing them in that situation, but they are beautiful, and I'm sure they would be very nice. So what I have here, let me turn the camera down. I'm kind of going to be moving a little bit because there are different, when I go to torch, I'm going to go to my lamp working area and use that, and I'm going to have to carry my camera to go over there and set up, so there might be a little bit of weirdness, you know, in the broadcast, but you know, but I'll try to do it so that you can see what I am doing. So I'm going to lower the camera here and show you some of these rings. I'm going to call them rings, but I hope you just understand that I'm not meaning them as rings for your fingers. Now, the ones that I got from Rio are different. They labeled them as a copper donut bead, and they are just, there were two sizes of them, these thick, really thick donuts, and then there were these two sizes here. And I hadn't thought about drilling a hole in the top and bottom like Amy did, and when I saw that on her demo, I was just like, my God, I don't know why I didn't think of that. You know, I just assumed that you would have to torch them with a mandrel and holding it from the center. And that's what I did with the ones that I had enameled previously. But now that I know about drilling the hole on both ends, it makes it a whole lot easier. The only thing with that, saying that, is to have the mandrel hold the piece in place, you have to have, you know, a top and bottom hole. And that's what I was kind of missing. I don't have a mandrel on the table. That's what I was kind of missing when I was trying to do these on my own, and it was awkward trying to hold it, and then the mandrel would get stuck in the enamel on the inside, and I was just having a heck of a time with it. Let me see if I have an awl here that I can hold this with. So you're holding, I'm just putting this here for demonstration. Say this was your mandrel, and I'm putting it through both holes, and then you're able to work with the donut or the copper tube without being on an angle. This, if you're just having the one hole, this is really dicey trying to work like this with stuff just kind of flopping around. And then the mandrel's longer and would oftentimes get stuck on the inside walls of this enamel, which would be very frustrating. And, you know, I just wasn't thinking about having a hole at the bottom because I really didn't want a hole at the bottom. But it makes sense doing it the way that Amy's doing it, and how she hangs her, like if it's for a pair of earrings, she puts a head pin through and then has something on the bottom, but the wire shows. If the wire doesn't bother you, that's a great way to hang it, because then you can put something on top and finish it off. And she had a necklace with a bunch of these joined together, you know, just linked next to each other, and it looks pretty cool. I think one of them, she had leather in between the holes, and I thought that that was kind of fun. Gail, I imagine you can do it in the kiln. I have not done it in the kiln, so I don't know for sure, but I don't see why not, really. As long as you put them on a trivet, you should be able to do those. I don't see why not, really. Okay, so along with these today, I'm going to also do a few of the enameled head pins that you could use if you wanted to inside of these for a bottom, for the stopper on the bottom. Or you could just put like a little, you could put a head pin with a daisy disc or a little silver ball or something like that if you wanted to finish it off like that as well. So we'll cover a bunch of ground. So, and this was one of the enameled donuts that I got from Rio. That's one of those. And this is another one. And I fired some Millefiori, or they're actually called floral wafers. That's the correct name for these in the enameling world. They're very fine little chips, which I'll show you when I go over to the torch. But that's the result of these pieces that I got from Rio. So these are more curved. They have a more finished look, but these others are just fine, you know, just as well. This is the hardware store sizes here. And I guess I didn't do a large one. I just enameled a smaller one. And I tried to flare this one like you would for a spinner ring, but I just found this copper to be awfully thick to do a good flare, so that when I put the enamel on, when I torch fired it, it kind of just filled in that area that was flared. So that kind of was a fail on that part. But you certainly can do that with, this is a little ring that I cut off of that long tube. You could do that, although this is thin for a spinner ring, but this has got a much thinner wall, so you can flare these a lot easier. I hope I'm not confusing you. I'm just kind of all over the place. Now, another interesting thing with these donuts that I got from Rio, and don't bother to even look at Rio because they don't carry them anymore. Sadly, they don't. And I've done a Google search and really tried to find them. Somebody has to have them somewhere. And they don't say, they just say they were made in the USA, but I have no idea what company they actually came from. But if you wanted to pursue that, you could, you know, try to maybe get a little further than I did, but I've got a whole box full of these, so I don't really need them anymore. to pursue buying them. But an interesting thing with these donuts is you can put them in the hydraulic press, and this is what you get, which is kind of cool. You don't have to press a whole lot. They smush kind of easily, but this would make a nice earring as well, or a pendant like that. Or you could string them, put the holes on the sides and make a string of them for a necklace. Something like that. I mean, you guys can come up with different ideas. You certainly don't have to do what I'm doing. It's just sharing this information with you, and then you guys can come up with things on your own if you want. So this one I did this morning, and I kind of like that. I think that would make a pretty pendant, but it also, you could make several of these and put them in a row, and maybe, I don't know, loop them with leather or whatever, like Amy did, and I think they would be fun. So Amy, thank you for that suggestion. It gave me another thing to demonstrate and possibly interest you in doing something different. So, all right. So I'm going to show you how I prepare these pieces. And what I did was I needed something stable to drill the hole into the copper pieces. So I'm going to move these over here. All right, and I have a drill press, a small little drill press. I'm going to be moving this thing around here a little bit. And, okay. And what I need to do is, well, first off, let me tell you what these things are really for. Because I had no clue, and I asked my husband. I said, "Have you ever seen these?" "Oh yeah." Well, they're tube crimps for copper tubing. They're crimps for tubing. So even though it says 3/4 inch on the bag or 1/2 inch on the bag, they're not truly that size. They are to fit a 1/2 inch pipe or a 3/4 inch pipe. So before I knew that, I went and I bought a 1/2 inch dowel rod and a 3/4 inch dowel rod, thinking that these would fit snugly on the dowel rod, and they do not, because their intended purpose was to fit over the 1/2 inch tubing or the 3/4 inch tubing. So I took some painter's tape and I just kind of wrapped it around till it was snug enough so that the tubing was snug enough to fit on here, so that I could drill drill the hole without it flipping around. So I did that on both sizes of this. Okay, so then the next thing is you need to make a little center punch, or make a little divot with your center punch to get your drill started. So, hey Tammy. All right, so bunch of stuff here. Make sure that you wear eye protection if you're using your drill press. And I'm just going to use a face shield because I already have glasses on, but they're not safety glasses. So a pretty neat tool to use is a ring clamp and or a drill press vise. And this is the Euro tool. I've got one of these little mini Euro tool presses, which is right here, a little drill press. And this is the Euro tool version of their drill press vise. You can use any drill press vise if you have one around the house. I always keep different blocks of wood too, because I don't want to have to adjust the height of my press. It's very doable, but I'm kind of lazy that way, so I don't really want to do that. But I found that if you try to drill into the ring without having this support under here, you tend to flatten out the top of the ring. If you like that look, that's fine. But I'm kind of anal about that, so I want this to stay round. So that's why I'm using this. And it also gives you more support. So what I'm going to do is, hopefully you guys can see this, I'm going to place the ring part on top of the metal of the vise right here. So that way I have something to hit against when I am making my little divot. I'm going to tighten this up here so it doesn't move. If you over tighten, you're going to make your ring an oval. If you don't mind that, that's fine. And then you can make yourself a little hole or a little mark where you want your hole. And there again, if you know me, I kind of am an eyeballer. So I'm just going to make a little mark with my Sharpie where I feel is the center of that ring, and then take a center punch and a hammer. And I'm just going to tap it once, because if you tap it more than that, you tend to make that top kind of cave in a little bit. Even though there's wood underneath it, it still has the ability to do that. So I'm just going to give it one tap. So I have a little starting place in my drill. I am using a 3/32 twist drill. If you buy them in little packages like this, they have a whole numbering system that's really hard to figure out in my world. These are Dormer drills, but there's different brands. This is a size 38 twist drill. If you have something close to that, I'm not sure exactly what increments they are sized at, but in my drill bit case, I have 38s, and then I have 41s. They go up. The higher they go up, the thinner they are. So, of course, going lower, the 36 is going to be a little bit chunkier than the 38. But I had these, so I used these, and they also seem to make a decent size hole. That's the other important factor when you're enameling, is the hole size. If the hole in your piece is too small, you're going to have a harder time removing that piece from the mandrel without getting the enamel stuck into that hole. So the larger your hole is, the more chance that hole is going to stay open, bigger, than closing up. And if you've ever experienced a closed hole in an enamel piece, it's very frustrating to try to drill that out. I suppose it can be done. I usually just move on to something else because that's frustrating to me. So I've just found that having a larger hole to start with is a whole lot easier. And then when we get over to the enameling station, I'll explain some other things that are pretty important to have. So we'll go over that as well. So that's my drill size for this. The other thing when I use the drill press is I started off at high speed. I put it on high speed, but as I am applying the pressure to coming down to start the hole, I start that slowly, kind of slowly, because if you get aggressive and you bring that twist drill down, it has a tendency to bend a little bit, to kind of go off center. So if you don't use that much pressure as you're just, kissing that metal, so to speak, then you can, as you cut through that metal, you can apply more pressure. But, starting off, I would start off slow, but yet with a high speed on the drill, if you catch that. Yeah, Gail, you can drill it out with a diamond in water, you know, you can do that, but I get frustrated with that. And I've also had times where maybe I'm just too aggressive when I'm doing it, but sometimes I will chip off more enamel around that hole that I want. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, you guys got to do what works for you. I'm just saying, you know, that's how I feel about it. But um, although on another note, enamel is pretty self-healing if you refire it. So if you do get cracks in your enamel, you can kind of fix that. There's a little bit of a technique to that, but you know, some people say, oh, my enamel cracked. Well, if you warm it up again, if you fire it again, but start off very far away from the flame, just kind of warm it up and gradually bring it down into the flame, you can kind of heal that. So it's a fascinating technique, enamel is. So, or medium, whatever. It's very fun. All right, so I'm going to put on my face shield, and I'm going to start this hole. And like I said, I'm placed right over the metal part of the bottom so that I have the support that I need when I'm making the hole. All right. Actually, I want to raise this up a little bit. Maybe that's too high. Actually, this should work. Starting off slowly. Now, I only went through the top. You might be tempted to go straight down and make the other hole at the same time. But I would say don't do that, because chances are you're going to go off center. The twist drill is going to move a little bit, or slip, or whatever you want to call it, and then you will have your holes not line up. And if your ring gets out of shape, you can just put it on a mandrel and kind of round that out again. All right, so to find where I want the second hole, I should have my mandrel, but I don't. So let's see if this will reach. And this is just how I do things. Yeah, this isn't going to work. I have to get up and get a mandrel. Hang on a sec. Okay, so I've got a mandrel, and I'm just going to put it in through the bottom hole and kind of look at it where it lines up. I know this is real scientific, right? I'm just eyeballing it where the hole is, I mean from the bottom, where it would be coming through on the top. Okay? It's not rocket science. My ring is still a little bit crooked. I didn't quite hammer that out as nicely as I could have. Let's just see if that's enough. All right. So then I'm going to put that back in the dowel rod holder here. All right. And I'm going to make my little divot. And just tap it once. Oh. No, that was off. That's what I get for not being real accurate. Not being real precise, I should say that way. Here, we'll try that again. All right. Put that in here. Start slowly. Okay. Everything's falling off here. Okay. So there again, that kind of smushed the copper a little bit, but we'll straighten that out. And, you know, if it's a little irregular and that doesn't bother you, you know, then you don't have to fuss with it. Okay, now let's see if I'm on target or not. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good. That's centered pretty well. So like I said, having that extra hole makes all the difference in being able to balance this. Now, it's going to spin around until you get that first coat of enamel on there. Once that first coat is on, this will stay steady. It'll be stuck on there, and then you're able to complete enameling it. So let me prepare a couple of these. Hey, Wendy. All right. Hi, everyone. Hey, Benia. Okay, who's on the ship? Deborah, are you on the ship? Waiting to, I'm literally on a ship waiting to sail. Well, you lucky dog, you. And I mean that in the nicest way. That sounds wonderful. Okay, so I've got my 2 holes there. I'm going to make another one, or do another one up here. I'll do a smaller one. Oh, I already have it on there. Imagine that. Oh, and I think I'll place a hole in this donut as well. Oh, Suni's on the ship? All right. Okay, so let's put a hole in this one. And for this, I don't need the vise. I can just place this in my ring clamp because I'm putting a front and back hole, you know, the front hole on here and not going through the top. So I'm just going to place this in the ring clamp. I put my little 2x4 here. Oh, I need to start off my center hole. All right. I will put that on here. I don't know if you can see. I'm kind of doing this half-assed right here. That's how most of my stuff is. All right. All right. Face protection. I like the shields because a lot of times when you're working with stuff, it's splattering out, and I cannot stand having those little crumbs of things hitting my neck and then going down into my bra. That is not fun. All right, so I'm going to place this here, kind of center this up. I don't know if you can see or not. Maybe that's a little better, I hope. All right, so I'm going to hold on to this snugly. nice hole right there. Okay. If you get a lot of copper shavings by the holes, sometimes I found if I kind of move the piece around the twist drill, it'll knock those off. But if they don't and they're sticking out, you can just file those little pieces off, either with a little round file like that, kind of knock that off, or a flat file, wherever that went. Here it is, and you can just get that off there. But the enamel is going to cover most everything. However, any little sharp pokey things, you should get rid of those things. Okay. All right, so I've got that. Now I need to make the hole on this one. Get my little trusty vise again. Set it on the bottom of the metal on the vise, just to secure it. Give it a tap. Okay. This one's got some sharp edges just naturally in the copper, so I'm going to get those off. So I don't want anything poking me or poking through the enamel. Okay. And there again, I need to straighten this out a bit. Just round it out. All right, and then I need to mark where I want my second hole. So I'm doing my, I guess I got you guys on crooked. Maybe I'm making you dizzy, I don't know. Okay. Okay, so I marked the top. Hi, Anna. I'm glad you could join me. All right. So we'll put this back on here. I tried it with Gorilla masking tape first, but I didn't like it. It seemed like it was too spongy or something. But maybe I'm just being fussy. All right, so I'm going to put this back in here. And then make my little center hole mark. Tighten this vise up. When I tighten the ring up in the vise, that's when I kind of flatten out the top a little bit. And that's why I said just hit it once with the center punch so you don't smash it a lot. Okay. Just enough to get that twist drill started. All right, so there is some type of a screw thing to hold the vise in place, but I don't know what I did with it, so I'm just being careful. And I'm only making a few holes, so if I was doing production work, I would want this fastened down. so I've got my second hole here. And I can see I'm a little off center, but that's okay. I'm not expecting to get any awards for this stuff. Where's my rawhide? Oh, here it is. I swear I lose stuff in front of my face. All right, give it the mandrel check. Yep, I am in the center, so that's good. So I have a few things that I can enamel now. Take this off. You guys with me so far? Okay. Hey, Carol. All right. So I think I'll move over to the enamel area. Suni, you'd be surprised. I mean, I'm just, like I've said this before, but for those who don't know, this is not where I normally work. This is just a table that I do a lot of things on here, but I drag everything over here for the demos. So stuff is like all over the place. I generally know pretty much where everything is, but it's all kind of messy. So such is life. Life is too short to worry about everything being just so. All right, so I have two of the tube pieces from the hardware store and one from the Rio Grande Copper Donuts, and I'm just feeling something sharp here, so I want to get rid of that. Okay, so I'm going to move the phone over to a different area, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing over there. Got another phone holder over here. I need to turn on my oxygen concentrator because I'm using my lampwork torch, but you can use a hothead torch with canister gas. That's totally fine. I need to turn on my vent. Okay. Now, I am going to just turn the camera over a bit so you can see what I have here in this foil pan is a piece of fiber blanket. A lot of people use this for glass fusing or even for bead making. If you don't have a kiln, this is an acceptable way to cool your glass down if your glass pieces are not very large. If they're small, you can get away with this. The purpose of this is to the beads or the piece, whatever you're making, is extremely hot when you take it out of the torch, and you don't want it to have thermal shock. So if you just go from that hot flame to just cold on the table or on a piece of metal, it's more apt to crack. Not necessarily, but it could. So if you bring the temperature down gradually, you're more likely to have successfully fired pieces without cracking, or minimal at best. Okay, so that's a piece of fiber blanket right there. I have some different enamels. I usually put a base coat of white, just have 1055 white. These here are the little floral wafers that I have, that I use on these pieces. I also have a little jar of cat whiskers, what they call cat whiskers. They're very little fine, excuse me, enamel threads that you can use. If you like to play with glass, you can use some what they call stringers, which are very finely pulled pieces of glass rods. A standard glass rod is about, say, this big, this thick. And you can make a bunch of these little pieces, little thin pieces that will melt into your enamel work without any problem. There's a little sifter if there's something that you want to sift. And I have a pair of titanium tweezers that I use in lamp working, but I also use them for this as well. But you can use just plain old tweezers too if that's all you have. You don't have to have the titanium for the enameling. Excuse me. Debbie is asking if you can use vermiculite instead of the fiber blanket. Debbie, you can, but my experience with vermiculite is when you put it right into the vermiculite from that very molten stage, you can get some pieces of vermiculite stick to your enamel piece, and then it kind of messes up the surface a little bit. It's kind of like a fine line of knowing when to pull the bead off of the bead pulling station, which I'm going to show you in a minute. I also tried kitty litter. That was a suggestion. Or not kitty litter. I tried oil dry, which looks like kitty litter. But there again, if your timing isn't quite right, you can still get that to stick to your enamel. It comes off, but it leaves little marks, where that stuff was stuck on. I also use annealing bubbles. They're a little round ball of, I don't know what it is. I don't know what they come from, but if you smash them, they kind of crush up. That they're all about the same as far as leaving any mark on your enamel. If I'm going to use the bread pan, this is a torch firing system in which we used to put the vermiculite or annealing bubbles or oil dry, whatever, into the pan, so that way it had something soft to drop onto. But I found that you don't really need to have anything in the pan. It doesn't seem to affect the enamel just going into the plain bread pan. Excuse me. So this next thing is called a bead pulling station. And this is really a handy tool to remove your pieces from the mandrel. Say if your bead is up here on the mandrel and you want to get it off, I'll show you the technique, but you basically go up like this, pause for a second, and then knock it off. And then the bead falls down into the bread pan and not rolling around your table. Or if you have a lot of enamel on your rod, you can put it through this hole and push it and clean that area off. It's a hard concept, or kind of a hard concept to understand if you don't have any experience with this already. But these are pretty much the basics of torch firing enamel. With the immersion method, you can certainly torch fire on a tripod and trivet. This is my method of choice. Excuse me, but you can do whatever is most comfortable for you. This is how I initially learned, and I am comfortable with it, so I'm sticking with this. So, although I do, on occasion, when I made those bracelets that I showed last week, the enamel bracelets, those I actually did by both methods. I pre-torch fired them and got the Murini stuck on the discs, and then I finished up in the kiln so that they would melt entirely without burning the devil out of those discs. So that might be clear as mud. I don't know. I'm also going to be using what they call 620 enamel, which is kind of like frit. It's enamel that's chopped up in little flaky pieces. This I'm going to be using for my head pins, but you could also add this to your designs if you wanted to do that. So I've got a couple of different colors here for the head pins. I might incorporate it in some of the little tubes too, just to show you about that. All right, so am I missing anything? You need a pair of utility pliers. These are just cheapies I get from Harbor Freight, long nose pliers to grab onto hot things so you don't hurt yourself. Excuse me. Whenever I talk for a while, I start getting all choky. I could never be a great speech maker. Anyway, so you got to have those. And I'm working off of a aluminum baking pan from the dollar store. That's kind of an easy thing. And what else? Well, you guys ask me questions as I go along. Now I'm going to set the torch back, the phone back up here on this other holder, and hopefully, well, crap, I think I just broke it. Okay? There's always some technical difficulties. Sorry, I think I just broke this. I did. All right, hang on a minute. I'm going to try to move my other holder over here, okay? So just hang on. Talk amongst yourselves. It's not a demo from me if something doesn't screw up. It's just a fact. Almost there. Egads. All right. All right, I think I've got it. We shall see. All right. I can tell you my exhaust fan is like a kitchen exhaust fan, but it's a heavy duty one. I bought this from another lamp worker who had this set up where they taught classes, actually. And it works really well. So it's vented outside. All right, now let's see if all right, here's my torch. Right there. Here's my torch. Well, that was an easy enough save. I'll tell you, it's always a shit show around here. I'm going to wear my lamp working glasses, which consists of a pair of magnifying glasses, just cheap readers, and these little flip safety glasses, or didymiums for the flame. All right. So, I've got my oxygen concentrator on. I've got all my things set up. I keep my enamel powders by my non-dominant hand, ready for use. Put some enamel threads here on the table, or on the pan, the cookie sheet. All right, I've got my pieces of copper. And I've got some little wires set up here that I'm going to make my head pins from. Okay, so light my torch, turn off my oxygen, turn on my flame, turn the oxygen back on. Okay. All right, now can you guys hear me okay? Okay. All right. So, I'm going to get my mandrel. I keep a little jar of water here. That's the length. Good. Thank you, Lynn. I have a jelly jar here that is full of water so that I can dip the mandrels in there and clean them off after I'm done. And I'm going to, the thing with enamel, at least with the torch firing method, is your copper has to be like screaming red hot before you dip it into the enamel powder. And it needs to get a good coat all the way around. Your first coat is pretty important, okay? No, I'm doing one of the rings first, Suni. I will do the head pins in just a few minutes. So I'm going to put my mandrel in here, and I'm going to try to keep it closer to the tip of the mandrel. I don't want it all the way down or in the middle of the mandrel because I have to dip this piece into a can of enamel. And if I've got this mandrel sticking out long and the beads down here, I'm not going to be able to fit into the jar. Okay, so it just makes sense to work off of the tip of the jar. Plus, you're not getting enamel all over your mandrel. Okay, that just makes another complication. All right, so I've got my base coat in hand on my left hand, and I'm going to start heating up the copper, and I'm going to get it red hot. Okay, see how red hot it is? Now I'm going to dip it into the enamel, kind of dredge it in there like you would when you're frying chicken or coating chicken, and then put it back into the flame. Now it's scooted back, the ring scooted back a little bit off of the mandrel, so I'm going to go to the bead pulling station, and I'm just going to scooch this up a little bit so I stay close to the edge. I'm going to dip back in here again in the white. And now I'm done with the white, with the base coat. And I only do that because I'm covering copper, and I think that it helps bring out the true color of whatever you're dipping into. and especially when you're working with transparents. I'm working with an opaque right here, and I slid right off of the end of that hole. There we go. I'm working with opaque enamel right now. So now I have what they call Nile green, heating this all back up to glowing, dredging it into the powder, into the enamel, giving it a good coat, tapping off the excess. And now I'm going to heat this up again. Now, one issue is having that mandrel in there, it's collecting a lot of enamel. And that's going to make it more difficult to remove this from the mandrel. We're going to try our best to take care of that. So now I've got 2 coats of the enamel on here, of the color that I want. And now I'm going to put on some little floral wafers just for decoration. So I'm picking these up. They're very tiny, and just heating a spot and placing it on there. It's not anything that requires a lot of time. They melt pretty quickly. This is not like using lampwork millefiori. Those are much thicker, and they take a lot more heat to melt because of their thickness, and you could really fry your piece trying to get those pieces melted. That's why I use the kiln. I kind of like tack these on with the torch and then finish them off in the kiln. Just pressing that down as they heat up. Working with glass, to me, it's fascinating. I just really enjoy it. There are so many glass artists that are so good. I'm not there, but I enjoy what I do. You know, there's different levels. This one's just got the little floral wafers on it. All right, now I've got this big glob of enamel in the center. And I'm going to try to just pull some of that off with my tweezers, if I can, just to get rid of some of it. It hardens pretty fast. Just to remove some of it, so I don't have this huge puddle of enamel. All right, now let's see. The thing with this is to get it off of the mandrel is it has to be hot where both holes are, because it like cools off almost immediately to the point where you can't remove it from the mandrel. So it has to be pretty much in liquid stage for you to pull it off. And this is where you could get your holes plugged with enamel if you have too much enamel on it. So let's see what we can do here. This is a little bit unorthodox, but it works. What I'm going to do is push, there's a little hole in the bead pulling station, and I put the mandrel in that hole and moved my mandrel down, moved my ring down a little bit away from all that enamel. I'm going to take this off from the bottom if I can. And this is a little dicey. See how I'm pushing it down on the mandrel? That cooled off before I even got to it. And this is where I'm going to use my utility pliers too to help remove this. So now, this rod is not hot where your hand is holding it, but as you move up, it does get hot. Now, I'm going to see how that it's loose. I'm holding it with the pliers. It's cooling off a little bit on the rod, and then I'm going to place it on the fiber blanket. You don't want to put it immediately on the fiber blanket because it can stick to that as well. So you just give it, just a little bit of a minute so that it kind of cools off, but it's still loose. And now I'm just going to drop it onto the fiber blanket. And now I still have all this enamel on my mandrel that I want to remove. So I'm going to crack that off by heating it all up, heating that mandrel where the enamel is. And then I'm going to dunk it in the water. You hear that? And all that enamel cracked off. The mandrel turns dark, but that's okay. That doesn't matter. Okay? So now we're ready to go. Now, another note, just in case you do this method, is there's always a little bit that kind of hangs around here of the crusty enamel. And I try to burn that all off and wipe it off so that way those little crumbs don't get into your enamel cup. If they get in here, they're like little black boogers in there, and they get on your designs. So you want to get rid of that. So I'm heating this up again to make sure I can get them all off. And then I'll quench it again. You can actually burn through your mandrel if you stay on it in one place too long. So I know I'm telling you all this stuff, and I hope I'm not scaring you, because it's really a fun technique. And then I just kind of wipe off the mandrel to keep it as clean as possible. Okay, so now I will, any questions? Let me see here. Oh yeah, Kathy, this is so much easier. Just reheat it and quench it, and it just kind of cracks off. Well, you can do it like that too, Shirley, but I'm telling you, this is way easier just to dunk it like that. So that in itself is worth the price of admission, right? All right, so now I'm going to do the larger one, and I'll put something else on top of this one too. And like I said, this is going to just flop around until you get that first coat of enamel on it, and then it'll stay put. All right, let's see here. I used the blue on that one, so let's do this one in red. So I've got my red here ready. Red enamel in hand. Oh, I need the white first. Sorry. I'm going to put my base coat on first. The more enamel you use, the more likely it's going to get stuck. That you're going to have a harder time getting it off the mandrel. But it's hard to not put too much on also. So it's really stuff that you've got to play around with. All right, so it's getting red hot now. That first coat is really important. That's what sticks to the metal. And you see, I don't know if you can see, but there's some black on here where I didn't quite get it in there fast enough. So I'm going to give it another coat and try to concentrate on that area. To get that covered. Take off the excess. And it's funny when you're working with red and some oranges, some of the colors, mostly red though, I think. When you dip this into the enamel, when you dip the hot piece in there, the enamel actually turns a black color. But that's just momentary. That goes away as soon as it's cooled off. See what I was saying? It turns black, and then it goes back to red when it cools. And these little jars, these little tins, they get hot after you've been putting this hot metal in there. Even though it's momentary, if you're doing a lot of pieces, your container can get pretty warm. So just be careful. So I'm melting this all in. I know this is all pretty unorthodox. I mean, I'm just trying it because I just want to see what works. But I wasn't taught to do this, but I'm doing it anyway. All right, so there's the red. Now let's put, and another thing is this enamel stays hot for a really long, I mean not enamel, the copper stays hot for a really long time. So just be careful. I'm going to just put some of these little cat whisker things on here. They're called enamel threads, but they also go by cat whiskers. I don't know who coined that phrase, but I think it's okay. There's a similarity there. And there's no rhyme or reason to this. It's just whatever I'm applying, wherever it falls. Guess I don't need to put red on red. Oh, I can put some of these 620 enamel chips on here too. It's just random. It's nothing I've thought out. It's just completely random. Put some green on here too. And if it's not hot enough, it's going to fall off. So that's okay too. I should have picked out some more colors. Just grabbed a few. All right, so I have things that are kind of stuck on here. So a few cat whiskers, a few 620 enamel threads or shards or whatever you want to call it, and melt that in. You could leave it lumpy if you wanted to leave it lumpy. It's just really whatever you want to do. push that in a little bit. I've got a lot of enamel on here, so that's going to be interesting getting this off. The red turns kind of black, like I said, not just in the powder, but until that piece actually cools, it looks like you've done a black piece. The color comes out as it cools off. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing with this and push it down. If I used the bead pulling station the way it's intended, it would be to put it on here and pull the bead off. But there's so much enamel on here that it's going to just clog that hole up. That's pretty much guaranteed. So I'm going to try to work from the other way, which is a little bit more dangerous, but it works. So I was successful to pull that down in one go. So I'm grabbing the mandrel where it's hot with the pliers. Okay, and the cool end is cool, so just knock that off. And I got a thread of enamel inside that I'll burn off quickly. Otherwise, your pliers will stick to the enamel. And now I'll place this in the fiber blanket. And I'm going to crack off this extra enamel. I generally cover my enamel if it's close by, because sometimes those little things pop off anyway and they get right into your jar. Instead of like right next to it, they go right in the jars. Do it again. Now you can, over time, bend your mandrels, and sometimes you can successfully straighten them out, and other times not so much. And then if you've got a wonky mandrel, your stuff just doesn't move right on it. So if you've ever experienced that, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. All right, so let me do this last one here, and then we'll do some head pins. So this one's just got the top hole. That's it on this one. I'm going to get a different color just for some variety. Hang on a second. I can't decide. Okay. I'm going to do a transparent on this one. This is rose pink. It looks like it's white, but it's not. All right. So I'm going to heat this up. Red hot, screaming red hot, into the white. I just thought that was so fun that you could put this in the hydraulic press and get a totally different shape. Okay, so I put 2 coats of that on. Now it's going to go into the rose pink. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of twirling my mandrel and making the piece come down further away from the top. This is intentional because what I want to try to do is get rid of this enamel that's on the top of the mandrel. So I'm going to just dunk this tip in the water right here to crack that off. You just have to be careful so that you don't lose your piece in the water. I'm telling you, I know all the stuff I'm doing is really unconventional, but that's kind of how I roll. So, all right, so I've got the thing of it is you just have to be careful. You have to use common sense. Maybe that wasn't very common sensey, I don't know. And just be prepared for anything to happen. All right, so now I'm going to lay some Murini or the floral wafers on the top of this. I'm holding it at a slant. It's stuck to the mandrel. I've got some enamel on my tweezers, so I just burn that off. And I'm just putting this on the front of this piece, what I'll call the front. Just let those melt in a little bit. And this one I'm going to drop into the bread pan on the bead pulling station. Okay. Get that excess enamel off of here. Okay. Now, you have to remember that this copper is extremely hot. So you want to just handle it very carefully. And I put it in the fiber blanket. Now we'll make a couple of head pins so you can see what that's about. And what I did was I cut up a bunch of copper wire, and I believe this is 22 gauge, but you could use 20 gauge. 20 gauge is probably the best. I guess it just depends on what you're doing and how you're going to wire wrap them or use them. So I usually cut about a 3 or 4 inch length because I don't know what it's going to be when I decide to use it. I'm sorry, I'm shaking this little table that's next to me. Okay, so what I'm going to do is grab the copper pin at the top of the pin. I've got my 620 enamel here, and then I'm going to start to heat up the tip. Give it, just ball it up slightly, and then dip it in the 620 enamel. And the enamel sticks to it, if you can see that. Hopefully you can see that. And it just balls up just like that. You can make it slightly larger if you want, but you risk having it just fall off. It gets too heavy, or the wire melts through, and then it just drops. And that's why you need to have, you know, like a heat-proof surface below you. So now you have a little bit bigger head pin on there. Okay, these I'll stick them in the fiber blanket just because it's here, but there's just such a small amount of enamel on there that you don't have to do that. These are probably good in the vermiculite or the annealing bubbles, or just not. But I mean, I have had some crack, so it's probably best to let them anneal a little slowly, out of you know, not getting the thermal shock. This is probably a little too much. If it is, it'll just fall off, which it's going to do. It just did, but that's good for you to see. That's a nice one right there. And the color will come out as it cools. This will be green. The green kind of looks, this particular green looks pretty orange when it's hot, but then as it cools, it becomes green. This one's a 20 gauge. I can feel the difference in the thickness of the wire. These are fun little accents. You can attach them to different pieces and coil the ends, kind of make it look like a little sprig. But the 620 enamel comes in a lot of different colors too. But there again, I don't know why, I just picked 2 colors for the demo. But this is kind of mesmerizing. You could sit here all day and just do head pins. All right. So now I'm going to turn off my torch. I'll leave the oxygen on. All right. So now, I'm not going to put my, go back to the table, and I'm just going to sit here where I am. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Let me see here. Yeah, the torch setup, like I said, is for lamp working. When I first started doing enamels, I wasn't doing glass. So I started with a hothead torch and canned gas. And It works very well, but it's loud. It's very loud. Um, but that was okay. You know, I lived with that just fine. But then I was hanging out with some lamp worker friends, doing some play dates, and they were all making glass beads, and I was doing enameling, and they kind of brought me over to the other side. And then my friend Rhonda was not using her torch, so she let me have it, and it just makes it so much nicer because this is permanently set up, and I can just come over here and enamel just a couple of pieces or whatever, and I don't have to bring in all this other stuff to work on it. So this is quite handy to do. Everything, at least for me, has just kind of evolved. You know, I started out like I think like a lot of people do, just stringing, you know, making little earrings with head pins and stringing, which is great. I had great fun doing that, and occasionally I'll still do that. But it just seems like one thing leads to another all the time, and it's like we're constantly going down these little rabbit holes and finding other things that are fun to do. So let's see here. Anything else? I don't know why this keeps coming back. You missed what I didn't say where I purchased the mandrels, but you can get them on Etsy. There's several different places that you can get them. Um, Actually, I don't know if there's several, but I think four places come to mind automatically. And Painting with Fire, which where I started with my enameling journey, and learned a lot of wonderful stuff with great people. And then there is Enamel Warehouse with Jean Van Bretterode. She sells a whole line of enameling products. I'm not sure if she has the mandrels, but she might. Painting with Fire has them. And then I just discovered, well, somebody told me about it. I didn't know about it. I think it was Amy Johnson who told me about it, with another Etsy site called I Love Enamels, all one word, and they sell mandrels. Uh, in fact, I just ordered something from them for the first time last night. They have mandrels that have like a little cushion on the end, and they're kind of pricey, so I only bought a couple of each. And where the regular standard mandrels, you know, are quite inexpensive. So, but I thought I'd give them a shot, try them out. Uh, and I know you can get the bead pulling station from I Love Enamels. I'm not sure if Painting with Fire carries them or not right now, but they did, so I don't know about that, about getting them, but they also carry a full line of enamels. You can get enamels from Thompson Enamel directly from their website, but I don't think that they carry the mandrels. I think that's more of a tripod trivet deal, you know, for enameling, and maybe using the kiln more. I don't know. So there's those places. I have a handout, and I tried to do a fairly thorough job on that. Luckily, I made the handout before the weekend show, otherwise it would not have gotten done. But there are resources listed on there that you can kind of check out. If there's anything that you can get on Amazon, I'll post those links to that. And I don't know, you can try these things out. And like I said, the those little copper circles or rings were from Menards or hardware store, and that information will be on the handout as well. Um, um, Cindy, I haven't really sold the head pins. If this is something that you don't think you'll do yourself and you want some, I can always make some for you. Uh, that's not a big deal. Okay, so what I made is in the fiber blanket, and I will turn that over. Interesting. Okay, I'll turn the camera over. Les is asking, someone mentioned raindrop, dewdrop, clear glass pieces. I'm not sure what you mean. You mean having the effect that looks like raindrops on there? I'm sure you could put a little lumped, well, I'm not sure, but I would think if the 620 enamel comes in clear, that you could get that effect with that. That's something that I could maybe play with and see. But here are the projects that we did that I just torch fired. This is the red one, and it's not entirely cool, but it's getting there. So that was the red one with the random cat whiskers and some 620 enamel. And this isn't the best shot, but I can take it over the table later when it's cool and get a better picture of them. That's the last one, the pink one, and then this is the blue one that I started off with. Okay, and then these cool off pretty quick. These are the little head pins. So you could, I think like I was showing you before, you could put one of these, and I'm doing this one-handed, of course, since I'm holding the camera. You could put that through like that, and then maybe put like a little bead cap on the top, and then wire wrap that. That'd be a cute little earring. That's a la Amy Johnson style, which I'm so grateful that she was willing to share that information so I could present it to you guys. Okay. Yeah, Kathy, that would be great if you post a pic in the group. That way I'll know more what you're talking about. I think I know, but I'm not positive. So you could even, now that I'm playing with this, you could even put, I'm not good one-handed. These are still kind of warm. You could even put that beaded, that head pin through there and attach this to something too. So yeah, Amy does cool stuff. She does. Okay. All right. So guys, I think that's gonna end it for today. I hope you enjoyed watching it and that you learned a little something and that you might try it. If you try it, please post that stuff in our group. It's nice to see what we all do. I'm not sure what I'm going to do the next time around, but I'm always coming up with something, so we'll see. So I'll post the picture of this stuff later on after it's totally cool. And happy enameling. See you guys. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.